Hello everyone and welcome back to another video here at the End-to-End Hockey channel. Today we've got a few things to discuss, including a signing over in Detroit, some more injury updates for a couple teams, and trade rumors involving the Chicago Blackhawks, Detroit Red Wings, Columbus Blue Jackets, St. Louis Blues, and Nashville Predators. We'll get to all that coming up right now. Hello everyone and welcome back to another video here. I'll kick things off today with a signing that has happened over the past week, as the Detroit Red Wings have extended defenseman Olli Maatta on a 2-year contract extension. They'll have an average annual value of $3 million. Now, Maatta was brought in the offseason after spending a couple seasons with LA. He hadn't been really putting up much point totals ever since he had his career year with Pittsburgh in 17-18. And ever since then, his numbers have not done overly well. He was traded to the Blackhawks and then dealt to the Kings, and he spent the last few seasons with the Kings organization. Last year, he didn't really do great offensively, only having a goal and 8 points in 66 games, so he didn't do overly fantastic, but ever since signing with Detroit, he's done absolutely great, putting up 5 goals and 17 points in 51 games, and he's already on pace to be close to his career high of 29 points. I'm not sure if he'll break his career high, but he's going to be close. So he's had really great season with Detroit. He's played consistent top 4 minutes for the Red Wings, putting a lot of time with either Seider or Ronick as a left-handed defenseman. So he's looked absolutely great. I know he was a key acquisition from the Red Wings in the offseason to sort of fix that defensive core. I know they brought in guys like Ben Sherratt and Robert Haig as well, but I do think that they really like the Olli Maatta signing. So Maatta currently has a $2.25 million cap hit, so his cap hit's going to get bumped up to $3 million for the next 2 seasons. Not too much, but I definitely think Maatta, if he can continue to keep this pace that he's producing with the Red Wings right now, should be able to make that contract look good. So I think if he can continue to put up points like he has been this year, that contract's going to look pretty good for the Red Wings. It allows them to keep their top 4 group for the next few seasons. I mean, they had Sherratt signed to a 3-year deal, and they still have Ronick signed for at least the next season, and Seider's going to be signed for a long term, hopefully, for the Red Wings. So it's good to see them get Maatta signed. It's another defenseman off the market for free agency in July, and I think with the fit that Maatta had with Detroit, I think this signing is going to be great. So good for Maatta to find a home to stay for the next couple of seasons after this year. And the Red Wings have found a solid defender in Maatta, and they are definitely going to like having him over the next couple of seasons. And that's the only signing I want to get to. Next, we'll go over to the injury update part of the video. There was a couple of injuries that have happened over the past week. Start with the Edmonton Oilers, as they've gone a little bit more injured. Now we know that the Oilers were able to get Kailer Yamamoto back. He was activated off of long-term injury reserve and returned from his undisclosed injury after suffering around a month on long-term injury reserve due to the injury. So it's good to see Yamamoto get back. He's a really good key piece of the Oilers' top 9, and it's going to be vital for the Oilers to have a good playoff push. Due to this, they had to make some roster moves, and they moved young players Desharnais and Holloway back down to the minors, given the fact that those 2 are waivers exempt. And since arriving in the minors, Dylan Holloway has suffered an injury. As Holloway has an undisclosed injury, and he's going to miss at least the next month due to injury. Now, the Oilers are still trying to clear cap space. We know that they're trying to move Puljujarvi, so there was some option if they could clear enough cap space that they could probably call it back up, a guy like Dylan Holloway, and now they can't because of the injury. So, awful news. Holloway was a really good bottom 6 forward this year for the Oilers. Really done a great job for the Oilers. I think he has a big future in the Oilers' top 9, and that he was only moved down due to the fact that he's waivers exempt. So, given the fact that he is now lost for the next month, it's not a good scenario for Edmonton, but hopefully he can get back in the near future. Also, Evander Kane is back out. He's out with an upper body injury in his day-to-day. Now, this is a big injury, given the fact that they had to move those guys down. They're only playing with a 20-man roster. So it's not overly ideal for the Oilers to lose a guy like Kane, especially when they don't have players they can insert right into the lineup. It's only day-to-day, so hopefully Kane's injury isn't too long. Hopefully it's only a game or 2, maybe just over a week that he's out. So hopefully Kane can get back in the near future and it's not too long of an injury to recover from. Nice to see Yamamoto get back. It's a really big piece of that top 9, and it's going to be a really key piece of the Oilers' playoff run this year. But not good to see Holloway go down for a month, and hopefully he can get back in the next little while, but it's going to be really hard to make do without one of their good young players in Holloway. Next, over with the LA Kings, they've gotten 3 people back, and they're close to being fully healthy, as the Kings have gotten Arthur Kaliev and Trevor Moore off of injury reserve, and Gabriel Vilardi has returned from his injury, and all 3 have gotten back into game action for the Kings. Now for Vilardi, he'd missed a couple weeks, maybe closer to a month due to his injury, and losing him was not good. Vilardi had a very hot start to the season, has since cooled off a bit, but still, Vilardi is a really, really great player, a really good and talented young top 9 forward. He's dealt with a lot of injuries over the past little while that have sort of derailed his career a bit, but he seems to be getting it back on track. And losing him for those few weeks was not great for the Kings, having to make do without one of their better depth scorers. So, good to see Vilardi get back. Hopefully he can be inserted into the lineup and continue to produce the way he did to start the season. As for Moore, he's missed over a month due to undisclosed injuries, so it hasn't been overly great for Moore. He's a key piece of their top 6, was signed to an extension just a couple of months ago, and he looks like a big piece of the Kings forward group going forward. So losing him for that period of time was not great, but I do think that the Kings may do without Moore. They're still a really good team right now, fighting for a playoff spot, so getting Moore back is just going to help them. Moore's a really big part of the Kings' second line with Danault and Arvidsson, so to get him back into the lineup is a pretty good job for the LA Kings, and hopefully he can continue to be a lethal producer. As for Kaliev, he had only missed the past couple of weeks due to an undisclosed injury, so his hasn't been as bad, but still, Kaliev was a good middle 6 forward for the Kings. He showed that a little bit, especially with Moore being out, and I think Kaliev has a bright future in LA. So to see him go down with an injury was not great, but now that he's back, he's really good. So Grundstrom's really the only injured player on the Kings right now. And once Grundstrom's healthy, if there's no other injuries for the Kings, the LA should be completely healthy team. So good to see Moore get back. He should provide a really good boost to that second line. And good to see Kaliev and Vilardi get back, who are really good bottom 6 forwards for the time being. So good to see all 3 of these guys get back, and hopefully they can all help LA continue the hard playoff push for a top 3 spot in the Pacific Division. Next is the New York Islanders. They've suffered a couple of injuries, as Jean-Gabriel Pageau, Josh Bailey, and Matthew Barzal have all gone down with injuries and are going to be out for different periods of time. Now for Pageau, he was recently placed in injury reserve. Not great news. He's currently day-to-day right now with an upper body injury, and it's not overly great to see him go down with an injury. He's already missed a couple of games, so hopefully it's not much more longer than a week or 2 for Pageau to get back into game action. He's a really big piece of that group. He's one of the better offensive defensemen they've had this year, and he's actually put up some decent amount of points, so to lose him is not great for the Islanders. Hopefully he recovers. It's only day-to-day, so it's hopefully not too long. Josh Bailey suffered an upper body injury. He's going to be out for an unknown period of time. Bailey has sort of fallen out of favor with the Islanders, being more of a bottom 6 forward now, and sometimes being a healthy scratch. There's been a lot of talk about the Islanders trying to get rid of the Bailey contract, but still, he's a good healthy body to have in the forward group and can play decent for 9 minutes, so to lose him for any period of time is not great. Hopefully Bailey can recover in the near future and get back into game action. As for Barzal, this is a really bad injury. He's going to be out week to week with a lower body injury, and he's going to be out for a very long period of time. So it does sound like Barzal's injury could be a couple of weeks at least. So it's possible we don't even see him till March, possibly early March, mid-March, somewhere around there at the earliest. But not good news for Barzal. He's a huge piece of the Islanders forward group, and the Islanders are in the midst of a really big playoff run, trying to make a playoff spot with guys like the Panthers, the Penguins, the Capitals, the Red Wings, the Sabres, all hot on their heels to try and make a playoff spot as well. So it's definitely going to be interesting to see how the Islanders do over the next couple of weeks without Barzal, and hopefully Barzal can get back in the near future, and he's not out too long with this injury, as he's a huge part of the Islanders organization. He's probably their best offensive forward, and losing him is not great. So hopefully Barzal can get back in the near future, as well as Bailey and Pageau, as that forward group has taken a beating over the past little while. And with Wahlstrom still injured for the Islanders, it's not great to see all these guys go down with an injury, and their forward group looks bleak. So hopefully they can call upon some of their younger guys to make do for now, as these other guys start to get healthier. And lastly, with the St. Louis Blues, they've had good and bad news on the injury front, as they activated Marco Scandella and Scott Peronovich off of long-term injury reserve. they have placed Jake Neighbors on injury reserve. Pavel Buchnevich has gone down with an injury, and Torrey Krug has gone back from his injury. Now, Krug has been in and out of the lineup over the past week due to an injury. He got back, then he suffered a undisclosed injury, missed a game for the Blues, and is now back. So it wasn't too long of a period of time Krug was out. He was only out for like a game or two, and now he's back into the game action. So good to see the Blues get back Krug. Their D-core is probably the healthiest it's been all season, so good to see Krug get back. For Scandella and Peronovic, neither guy has been played at all this year. Scandella's missed the entirety of the season to this point due to a hip injury. Peronovic has missed the entirety of the season up to this point due to a shoulder injury. So to see these two guys get back is really great. Now, since they've been activated, they haven't played at all, so I would expect the Blues to get them back into the lineup in the next game or two. But definitely, with a lot of talk that the Blues could wind up moving a defenseman, it's good to see them get Scandella and Peronovic back. I think those two are really key pieces of that team. Scandella's a really good, versatile defenseman who can play either top 4 minutes or third pair minutes, and Peronovic seems to be a good defenseman for the Blues who can take steps forward this season. So nice to see the Blues get both of these guys back, and I would expect both of them to get back into game action in the near future. Neighbors going down with an injury is not great. Neighbors has split time between the NHL and AHL this year, and has done okay this year, but he suffered an upper body injury. He's going to be out for an unknown period of time. Hopefully it's not too long. He was placed in injury reserve, so he's at least going to miss the next week, but hopefully it's not too long after that he's back. Hopefully it's only like a week or two he's out, so hopefully Neighbors can get back in the near future. With the Blues selling off a lot of forward pieces over the past couple of weeks, they're going to need as many healthy forward bodies as they can get, and losing Neighbors is not going to help them. And then lastly here with Pavel Buchnevich, he suffered a lower body injury and he's going to be out for an unknown period of time. Now, it could just be for a couple of games, it could be for a couple of weeks. Not really sure about Buchnevich. He's a really good player, but he was recently coming off an ankle injury, so hopefully it's not related to that, but we don't know exactly for sure. So hopefully Buchnevich is not going to be out for too long. Hopefully Neighbors can get back in the near future, but to get Scandella Peronovic back in the next game or two, and for Krug to only miss a game is really good, and that defensive core looks great. So hopefully the defense can hold the fort down for the St. Louis Blues for the time being, while the forward group gets a little bit healthier with guys like Neighbors and Buchnevich now out. Now that's all the injury updates we want to talk about for today. I just want to quickly touch on some trades that happened over the past week. Now, I'm not going to get into very much detail about these trades right now, but over the weekend I did have a blog post dedicated to giving my opinion on both these trades. So if you want my opinion on both the O'Reilly and the Tyler Motte trades, I'll leave a link to that blog post down in the description below, so I'll tell you to go check that out. So definitely if you want my opinion on both the O'Reilly and Motte trades, I definitely ask you to check it out. But just basically the trades were these. So the St. Louis Blues moved Ryan O'Reilly and Noel Acciari to the Toronto Maple Leafs in a 3-team deal. So the Maple Leafs get Ryan O'Reilly with 50% of his contract retained by St. Louis and 25% of his contract retained by Minnesota. So they get O'Reilly at only a $1.88 million cap hit. They also get Noel Acciari, and they get Josh Pilar, who's a good prospect for Minnesota. In exchange, the Wild receive the Maple Leafs 2025 fourth-round pick for eating some of O'Reilly's salary. And the St. Louis Blues get the Maple Leafs 2023 first-round pick, so this year's first-round pick. The Blues also get the Senators 2023 third-round pick that the Maple Leafs had previously acquired. The Blues also get the Maple Leafs 2024 second-round pick, so next year's second-round pick, as well as prospect Mikhail Abramov and depth forward Adam Gaudette. So definitely a good trade for all these teams. Once again, if you want more analysis, go to that blog post that I did a little while ago and check that out. As for the other trade, it was a smaller one, but the Rangers acquired Tyler Motte from the Ottawa Senators in exchange for Julien Gauthier and a conditional 7th-round pick that will upgrade to a 6th-round pick, the lower of the Jets and the Rangers 6th-round picks that the Rangers have, if the Rangers are able to make the second round of this year's playoffs. So definitely a couple of good trades. Seeing O'Reilly moved isn't too surprising given the fact he was a pending UFA, but to see Toronto acquire him is also not too surprising given the fact that he's been linked to the Leafs for a while now. And to see Motte go back to the Rangers just helps that Rangers depth. So it's good to see these trades happening. Hopefully we'll get some more over the next little while. But if you want some really good analysis on those deals, definitely check out the blog post that I will link in the description below. And now we go over to the trade rumor part of the video. Let's start with the Columbus Blue Jackets. Over the weekend, there were a few reports out there that said that the Columbus Blue Jackets have a deal in place to move the defenseman Vladislav Gavrikov, and that they're just waiting for the acquiring team to make another move so that they can free enough cap space to acquire Gavrikov. Now, I think this actually makes a ton of sense. It also explains why Gavrikov's been held out of the past couple games due to trade-related reasons. There's been a lot of talk out there that could that team be possibly Boston or maybe Edmonton. It's definitely possible. We know the Boston Bruins are a cap-strapped team who would definitely need to move out salary if they were to acquire Gavrikov. Some names to keep an eye out for. If the Bruins are a team who has the deal in place for Gavrikov, would be Craig Smith or Mike Riley. If you see probably one of these guys get moved to like a Arizona or Anaheim, or if they can find a deal to move these guys, maybe they're the team who winds up acquiring Gavrikov. I could also see Edmonton needing to be the team to clear cap space. We know that they have Puljujarvi, who they've been wanting to get rid of, and he has a $3 million cap hit, so if they were to get rid of Puljujarvi, they could easily fit in Gavrikov. So if you see Puljujarvi be moved or placed on waivers or something like that, maybe Edmonton is the team who is acquiring Gavrikov. There's also a couple of other teams. I know LA is more in on Chikrin right now, but maybe the Kings are one of those teams who are trying to get Gavrikov right now. There's been some other talks as well. I'm not exactly sure who else would have interest in Gavrikov. I know maybe Seattle, maybe the Golden Knights, the Penguins. Would the Capitals have interest? There's a couple of teams out there who I think would be interested in Gavrikov, but it seems like there's a deal in place for Gavrikov right now, and he's likely to be dealt in the near future. It's just that the acquiring team needs to free up some cap space, which is probably what a lot of teams would need right now in the NHL. So it seems like Boston may be the front runners. It's also possible it's Edmonton. Maybe there's another team, a dark horse, who has a deal in place with Columbus, but it has sounded like over the past couple of days that Gavrikov has a deal in place and he should be dealt soon, pending a move by the acquiring team to free some cap space. Next, over with the Detroit Red Wings. Quick update here, but over the weekend, a couple of times it's been said that Tyler Bertuzzi is off the market and he will probably not be dealt anymore by the Red Wings. Now, after Friday's games, going into Saturday's action, if you put the standings by points percentage, which I think is a little bit better of a way to decipher who's where, Detroit was in a playoff spot. And that is actually quite surprising given the fact that they had fallen out a little bit. Now, if you look at the actual standings via the points, the Panthers, the Penguins, the Islanders, the Capitals, they're all within like a couple of points of each other. The Sabres and the Red Wings are a few points back, but they have a ton of games in hand. So it's really possible that the Red Wings are going to try and fight for a playoff spot. After the weekend, the Sabres are now into that final wildcard spot if you go by points percentage. So it's really, really a tight race in the Eastern Conference. And the Red Wings are in the heat of it. So there's a lot of talk that with the Red Wings in the heat of a playoff push right now, and for them trying to make the playoffs, they might wind up using Tyler Bertuzzi as their own rental instead of him moving on to somewhere else. And I think this is actually a pretty smart move by the Red Wings. The Red Wings haven't been a playoff team for a while, and they'll definitely try and push for being one. So if they can continue to do well, there's a very likely chance they could wind up making the playoffs. So hopefully they can continue to push and make the playoffs. It's definitely a possibility, but it seems like with their strong play as of late and the recent push to be in the playoff race, it seems like Bertuzzi has come off the market. And some have said that that might be the reason why the Maple Leafs tried to get O'Reilly right now, because they had some interest in Bertuzzi, but Bertuzzi's now off the market. So with Bertuzzi off the market, they went to go and look at some of the other forwards before they were all gone. So good to see the Red Wings doing well, but it's another big piece off the market in Tyler Bertuzzi. Over with the Blackhawks, there's a couple of updates there. First, Jonathan Toews is dealing with an illness right now. He released a statement saying that he's dealing with long COVID right now, and he's going to be not traded by a deadline. It sounds like his top priority right now is to get back to being healthy. Toews has missed the past week and a half due to this illness, so not great for Toews. There's some talk that he could return at some point in later March. So with that in mind, and given the fact that all the stuff that he would need to go through to make a trade happen, it just sounds like he's just not going to wind up being traded. So it's definitely going to be interesting to see what happens with Toews after this year. Will he get back into game action before the Hawks season is over for Chicago? And if so, and he looks good and healthy, where will he go in the offseason? As it doesn't look like and sound like the Hawks will retain Toews beyond this year. So it's definitely going to be an interesting situation to see. But with Toews' line mate, Patrick Kane, there's been a lot of talk recently that Kane has sort of rekindled interests in himself. Now, Kane, over the past 2 games against the Senators and the Maple Leafs, the 2 Ontario teams, he has gotten 5 goals, and he's looked like the really good elite level Patrick Kane that we all know over the past little while. So, with a lot of teams pulling out of the race for Kane because there's questions about his hip and the asking price is a little too high. Given the fact that he's gone back to his goal-scoring, really elite level ways, I don't think it's too surprising that Kane would have interest again. Elliot Freeman on the 32 Thoughts podcast stated that he thinks that the Golden Knights, the Oilers, and the Stars would have the most interest in Kane. And we know Dallas is trying to get a winger to play with Tyler Seguin. Patrick Kane would do really well, I think, with Seguin on the second line for the Stars. The Knights are trying to replace Mark Stone as best they can before the deadline so they can have another offensive weapon on the forward group. We know that they're not shy of being aggressive, so Kane to Vegas is also a possibility, I would think. We know the Edmonton Oilers are also trying to improve their back end and their forward group before the deadline. And Kane would be an outstanding fit in their top 6. So it definitely seems like these 3 Western Conference teams could all have interest in Kane. Maybe there's a couple of other teams out there who could have interest, like maybe a New Jersey or a Carolina if they don't get anyone else. So there's definitely going to be a couple of teams interested in Kane, and I think with his 5-goal performance over the past 2 games, he's just rekindled interest in him. So it's good to see teams get reinterested in acquiring Kane, and I think that if he was willing to move his no-movement clause, there's probably a few places he'd like to go, even though the Rangers are probably not one of them now. And I think that we could see a Kane trade before the trade deadline. We also heard that this is around the time right now that they will be making their decisions, both Kane and Taves, but now just Kane, on whether they waive their no-movement clause. So maybe in the next couple of days we'll hear if Kane is willing to accept a trade or if he's going to remain with the Hawks beyond this season. But I would like to know what you think. Does Kane wind up getting dealt before a deadline? And if so, which team do you think is going to be the best fit and acquire Patrick Kane? Next, over with the St. Louis Blues, there was some talk in last week's TSN Insider trading video that the Blues could look to move a defenseman next. Now we know they've moved Ryan O'Reilly and Noel Acciari. We know they've moved Tarasenko and Mikkola. We know that Barbashev's probably their next big move. But there has been some talk about the Blues maybe offloading one of their top 4 defensemen. It sounds like Colton Parayko is getting the most interest, but it sounds like they'd be willing to at least entertain the scenario of moving one of their top 4 defensemen. The problem with these guys is they all have trade protection, and they're all signed for long-term deals. Falk and Krug are both signed for the next 4 seasons at $6.5 million. Nick Leddy signed for the next 3 seasons at $4 million. And Colton Parayko signed for the next 7 seasons at $6.5 million. So it's definitely going to be interesting to see if they do wind up moving one of these guys. They got Perunovich back, which is good, and I think he's a really good future top 4 defenseman, probably more of a third pair defenseman right now. But if they were to give Perunovich some more playing time, if he's really good and healthy and back to game action, I would not rule out the possibility that the Blues do wind up trading someone. I think Parayko being moved is a possibility. I think Falk is maybe a little bit less likely, but there was also some talk in the offseason that Torrey Krug could have been moved as well. So the Blues defense is definitely going to be something to keep our eye on. I'm not going to say it's going to happen. It's definitely not a guarantee. But it's going to be interesting to see if there's a team or two out there who would have interest in a guy like a Colton Parayko or a Torrey Krug. And if so, could the Blues end up trading one of these guys before a deadline? I would like to know what you think. Do the Blues move one of these defensemen that are signed to long-term deals? And if so, which one do you think would be the most likely, and where would be a good landing spot for him? And lastly, with the Nashville Predators, there was some talk on that insider trading video as well, that the Predators' 3 games over the weekend against the Bruins, the Panthers, and the Wild were going to be crucial to see if they will actually be sort of standing pat or if they will be more sellers at the deadline. And they got shut out 5-0 against Boston. They were able to come back, double up the Panthers 6-3, and then they lost a very narrow decision to the Wild 4-3 in regulation. So as it sits right now, they're 7 points out of a playoff spot, and it's not looking good for them to make the playoffs. So over the past little while, it seems like there's a lot of speculation that the Preds are going to start becoming sellers now and to try and move off as many pieces as they can. We know dating back to a little while ago that Mattias Ekholm's name's out there, a good top 4 defenseman who has 3 years left at $6.75 million. So it's going to be hard to move that salary, but it's definitely Ekholm, I think, would have a lot of interest for a team who needs a defenseman like a LA and Edmonton or Ottawa, or one of those teams maybe. There was some talk also recently that maybe Dante Fabro was the guy who's moved, He's a pending restricted free agent who hasn't done overly well this year with the Predators, and maybe a fresh start could help Fabro out. There's also some talk that they could move pending UFA goalie Kevin Lankinen. Lankinen's probably doesn't have much of a future with the Preds, given the fact that Yaroslav Askarov will probably assume the backup role next year, would be my guess. So maybe they move Lankinen to a team who's looking for some goalie insurance. Up front, it sounds like the Predators are trying to extend forward Tanner Jeannot, and that if they don't extend him beyond the deadline, even though he's a restricted free agent, they may consider trading him. Jeannot's been a really good physical middle six forward over the past couple of years. There's been some talk about Niederreiter, who the Predators signed in the offseason to a 2-year, $4 million deal. He's only got the rest of this season and next year on his contract now, so there's been a lot of talk about if a team needs another forward, maybe Niederreiter's the guy. And there's also been some talk about defenseman Alex Carrier, who hasn't done overly well after his great offensive production last year. So it definitely seems like the Predators could be sellers at the deadline. Not exactly sure how intense of a seller they'll be. I highly doubt they'll be to the extent of the St. Louis Blues have, but definitely going to be interesting to see if the Predators start to move some of these guys, and if so, who goes. As I will let you know what you think. Are the Preds going to be sellers between now and the deadline? And if so, which players off the Predators roster do you think wind up getting traded by the trade deadline? So that's all I'm going to talk about for today. Remember to like this video and subscribe. Once again, I also do a blog. I will leave a link to that in the description below, and I can't wait to see you guys all for the next video. See you guys soon.